And we'll wait for the live stream for a moment. Do an audio check. This looks good. Live streaming will go live in a moment. There we go. Okay. So today we are wrapping up the text version of the tutorial. I believe I'm on page like 28 of 37 from the actual Google Doc. And this is about adding in an enemy. So right now, here's what our gameplay is like. I get my player to drop down onto the stage. I've got some animations from when I run, when I stop, when I jump while I'm running, when I jump while I'm standing. And it doesn't get stuck in those animations. So that's what we have so far, although that landing is a little cringe, but it's okay. So it's okay. All right, adding the enemy. So this is kind of like we have done the same thing over and over, so they expect us to be ready to go with these same things. So the first thing that I forgot that I need up is the media file, because I need to get into there. So they're going to say we want to add a new sprite. Insert a new object. It's going to be a sprite. Drop it in here. I'm going to right-click anywhere in this white space down here where I'm outlining with the mouse. And it's going to be import sprite strip. But I have to go and save the snails. So I'll go into the enemies folder. And then inside here, I'll find enemy snails. And remember, I'm looking for the one that looks unlike all the other ones. This one should have all of the... Yeah, all of them versus the other ones just have one. So snail.png is the file. I'll right-click and I'll download. And then in here, I'm going to right-click, import from sprite strip. Snail is right there. And it knows 17, replace the empty one, 1 vertical cell, 17 horizontal cells. So that's 17, that one's 1. Make sure this is checked. And then, same as we've done before, look at all this empty space up here above the snail. We want to get rid of that space as much as we can on all the frames. So I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard when I click this crop button with the left mouse button. So this is going to tighten up my image around the snail. Let's see, the speed for the snail animation we can set to 15. We can set it to loop. And let's get a preview of the snail sliding across. Okay, so there's our preview, what it's going to look like. It says set the origin of the snail to the middle and apply it, set the origin to the base of the snail image. So we're going to set it down to the bottom. So origin point right now is like the middle of the snail, and it varies from spot to spot. We're just going to go use number 2 on our keyboard to put it right down in the middle of the snail. And it's got to be number 2 on the number pad. So it's right there. Now that I have it, I can right-click over here and choose Apply to Whole Animation. And now every part of this animation is going to be anchored from that center point, which is what we want. Okay, so we'll close this. And we've got our enemy. We shift-click to crop the whole frame, close the editor, and let's call it Snail Enemy.
What was the speed?
15 frames that I had. Snail Enemy. Yeah, I got it still right. I'll do that one more time on here. So if I go to Edit Animations, it was 15 frames per second. Loop was checked off. Okay? So place it on the ground tile as shown, but we have to implement some logic for if the player runs into the snail from the side, they should get hurt and flash. And if the player jumps on top of the snail is going to get killed. So to make the flash behavior, we're going to actually add a flash behavior to the player, not the player box, the player. So right-click, Edit Behaviors, Add New Behavior, and we're just going to go and grab that flash behavior. So the flash behavior goes on the player, not on the player box. And then what we can do in the event sheet is we're now adding another event, and it should be on collision. So it's going to be player box on collision with another object. and that other object happens to be the snail enemy, this is where we're starting. But there's two ways we can collide with it. We can collide with it when we're falling, which means we're landing on top of it. Or we can collide with it when we're not falling, which means we run into the side of it. So the two events we're going to have here, we're going to right click and get a blank sub event. Right click, add blank sub event. Right click, add another blank sub event, just getting ourselves ready. So I've got two blank sub events for on collision with the snail enemy. Now, the first one is going to be player box is falling. So if we are falling, what we should see is test above the player. We can prevent the snail from accidentally being killed. If we fall past it on the ledge, say right click is being held another condition. So we have that one on here. Which one do we want to do? The Y coordinates? Yeah, I think we're going to do a Y comparison. So if we add an action on here, if the player is falling, this logic here would be like snail destroy. But we're not going to do this yet, so don't follow this part. The idea here is that right now I've collided with it, but nothing happens. But if I fall on it, we have it. But what happens if I'm falling on the edge and it runs into me like right there? So this is falling check isn't going to work entirely. What we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to ask the player box to compare Y, which is our up and down height. And we want to see that the Y value is less than snail enemy.y. The reason why we're doing this is because remember on the layout 0, 0 is this top corner. So if my player is up here and the snail is down here, our Y's will compare. The snail's Y will be bigger and then we'll have it destroyed. Andrew. I did not add any behavior to the snail yet. No, I'm just doing a snail is sitting there. We'll have it slide back and forth before the stream's over. Okay? So the y-axis increases downward. So if the player's y-coordinate is lower, it's above the snail. Then we're going to have that action on here, snail destroy. Okay? We could add another cool effect on here to the player box that will make the player bounce upwards a little bit. And it's going to be set vector y. And we'll say minus 700. So when we collide with the top of the snail, we're going to bounce up off of it just a little bit. So you can see right there, I kind of like bounce on it like it's a Goomba from Mario. So here it is. Bounce on it. Now, on here, let's see. Do we want the other condition on here? I think we might have both conditions on here. Add another condition. I think the instructions might give us another condition to try on here. Player is falling. Oh, no, not player. It's going to be add another condition on here. Sorry. Player box is falling. So these are the two conditions we want to check. We want to see if the player is falling and if the y of the player is less than the y of the snail. Destroy the snail, bounce the player off. And then I think we want to right-click here and add an else condition. And we can get rid of the blank one because that's how we get our else condition is right-click, add, else. And the action that we're going to add onto this one is going to be for the player flash on time, off time for a duration of 1 second. So on time 0.1, off time 0.1, duration 1 second. So what this is going to do is that, let's say, here's my player. Collide with it, I bounce. But if I run this again and I walk into the side of the snail, I'm going to flash because I've just been hit by the snail. Okay? So that's ourselves getting hurt. So it says, okay, so the player will never die if it flashes, but we've got to set, we've got the detection set whether they jumped on the top of it, and we're going to go through now to move the enemy back and forth on a platform. So this enemy we can get moving up and left and right by simulating platform controls. We want to make sure that it won't fall off ledges if we don't want it to. So what we're going to do is we're going to make another box that will end up being invisible called edge markers. So we'll create a sprite. It doesn't matter what size this sprite actually is. It doesn't matter what color the sprite actually is. I'm just going to make it green. I will make it transparent out on the screen for debugging. The size doesn't matter because out here I'm going to resize it to be probably like 25 by 25. That looks about right. And this is going to be called edge marker. And so basically what we'll do is we'll put 2 of these on the side of here. We'll grab all the edge markers and we'll say their opacity is going to be like 25%. So that way when we play the game, we'll see them there. Eventually we'll turn them to 0. They're kind of right there and right there. And we want to get the enemy to slide back and forth in between these, and then we'll start building more enemies on each stage. Okay? So the next thing that we need to do is we need to figure out a way for the enemy to move around. And to get the enemy to move around, we're going to give it an instance variable. So click on the snail enemy, and we can click over here to add or edit an instance variable, or you can right-click and choose add instance variable, or you can right-click over here and choose, I think it's not add to family. I think you can't add an instance. Oh, edit instance variables. So this will bring up the same menu. I'm going to add a new instance variable. We've only done number variables so far. We're going to change this one to a string. The document says it's a text variable, but text and string are the same thing. The name of this variable is going to be action, and the value is going to be right, R-I-G-H-T. So now the enemy snail has an action, which is a string, called right. That's what it means we're going to go to the right. And then eventually we're going to change it so that it goes the other way. So if we're moving to the right, we want to simulate pressing right on the keyboard. So let's go over to the snail, add behaviors, and we're going to add the platform behavior, but we want to disable default controls because we don't want our player moving the snail. Okay? So they have default controls. I think, did we set some values for, hold on, I'm just, I want to make the snail move in a way that snails actually do move. So right over here for max speed on that platform value, I'm going to set the max speed to 50 and the acceleration and deceleration to 100. So it takes a long time for it to get going, and it doesn't end up going very fast. And it takes a long time to slow down. So we have the edge markers. We have set our platformer acceleration and deceleration for the snail. The last thing that we need to do is write some commands in the event sheet for the snail. So we'll add an action for the snail to compare instance variable. And if the string action is equal to right, R-I-G-H-T, then the action we're going to add is on the snail platform, and we're going to simulate control, and we're going to simulate pressing to the right. We'll add an animation effect for the snail to not be mirrored. So we'll find set mirrored and set it to not mirrored. And then we can just take this whole line 16, copy, paste it. It becomes line 17. Double click to edit this action to be equal to left. set this one to mirrored, because we're now going left, and set this one to left because we're going to the left. So, how do we figure out when the snail should reach the edge? Because if we start this now, your snail should just walk off the screen very slowly. Bye, snail. Oh, they made it. So there's a snail going along. What's going to happen at this gap? I'm very curious. I think it's going to bridge the gap. Nope, bye, snail. So the snail's gone.
No.
I want the snail to be smarter than a green Koopa and know that it has to turn around when it hits the edge. So on the event sheet, and this is the last thing that we're going to do, we're going to add an event for the snail, and it's going to be on collision with another object. If that object happens to be the edge marker, we need this to do a check afterwards. So we're going to go and add a new sub-event. And that sub-event is going to see if the instance variable is equal to right. So snail, compare instance variable. If the string is equal to right, when we collide with the edge marker, that means we need to set the instance variable action to left, so it starts going the other way. So snail set instance variable, or set value, sorry, set value. This one will become left. So now on collision with an edge marker, if the action for the snail was equal to right, we're going to set it to left, which means it's going to start going left. And then we can just copy and paste this sub-event and reverse it for if it's equal to left, we need to change it to be equal to right. So that way, our snail will move around. Or we could have done an else statement on here. I think this one might get stuck flipping back and forth, so we may change this one to an else. Let's take a look and see. So if I run this one here, well, I'll get out of the way of the snail. Let's see if he turns around. Well, didn't turn around. So I may want to do a quick debug just to see what's happening. On collision with edge marker. Let's change this one. Add event else and say this one and get rid of this. So I'm changing it to an else to see if that fixes it. On collision with edge marker, action is set to left. Let's see if we can see it change. There we go. So yeah, it does have to be an else because otherwise it's going to collide with it again. But now we have our snail smart enough to not fall off the edge when it shouldn't. And then back on the layout, I can now copy a bunch of versions of these and make a bunch of markers. This one won't work well over here because there's a tree stump. I may move this one over here and then delete this other tree stump. All right, so now I've got a couple of snails to go and stomp on. This is where I'm going to stop the stream. So you know that the snails are going to turn around. I can stomp on them and jump. I have double jump, so I can still jump on this one. And then that one I just stomped on as well. A couple of things to clean up. Once the edge markers are working, I would go to over here, add an event system on start of layout, and then add action to the edge markers. Set opacity to 0, so that way we don't see them. And because it's on start of layout, I would move it up to the front and have it be my first item. What time does this period end? 18. I want to give you time to do stuff. Yeah, we're gonna leave it here. This is the end. I'm gonna stop the stream and say there's our enemies.